My parents gave away my $50,000 medical school fund to my sister. They told me I would be fine because I was the strong one. But 6 years later, when my mother lay dying in my own hospital, she learned just how strong I had become. My name is Amelia Hart, and for 6 years, I carried a silence inside me that was heavier than any medical textbook I ever studied. That silence started on a rainy Tuesday in March, the day my parents gave my $50,000 medical school fund to my sister, Chloe. I remember the exact moment because the air in my childhood living room felt thick, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. My mother, Susan, sat me down on the beige couch that had seen better days, twisting her hands in her lap. My father, Robert, stood by the window, staring at the rain as if it held the answers to a question he was too afraid to ask. I was 22 years old, freshly graduated from college with a degree in biology. My whole life, I had dreamed of becoming a doctor. Not for the money, not for the prestige, but because I wanted to heal people. I wanted to be the person who walked into a room full of fear and brought calm. I had worked 3 part-time jobs throughout high school and college just to afford my application fees for medical school. My parents had promised me since I was a little girl, that they had saved $50,000 for my medical education. It was my safety net, my belief that hard work paid off, that family kept its word. Chloe, my younger sister by 2 years, had always been the golden child. She had curly blonde hair that bounced when she laughed, while I had straight brown hair that hung like a curtain. She was the cheerleader, the prom queen, the one who could charm anyone with a flick of her eyelashes. I was the bookworm, the quiet one, the girl who spent Saturday nights in the library. I loved Chloe. I truly did. She could be funny and generous when she wanted to be. But there was always a shadow between us, a sense that my parents saw her as the sun and me as a distant moon. That Tuesday, Chloe was not even in the room. She was at her apartment, probably painting her nails or scrolling through social media. She had dropped out of community college 2 years earlier, saying it was boring, and had been working odd jobs ever since. Then, 6 months before that rainy day, she had announced she wanted to start her own boutique. A high-end clothing store in a trendy part of the city. She needed startup money. She needed $50,000. My mother finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, as if making it quiet would make it hurt less. "Amelia, sweetheart, we need to talk to you about something difficult." I looked up from the biology journal I had been reading. "What is it, Mom?" "Your father lost his job 6 months ago. You knew that, but we didn't tell you how bad things got. We've been barely keeping the house. And Chloe has this opportunity, this boutique. She needs the money now. We decided to give her your medical school fund." I remember setting down my journal very carefully, as if it were made of glass. "My medical school fund," I repeated. "The $50,000 you saved for me." Your father turned from the window. His face was gray, like old concrete. "Amelia, you're smart. You can get scholarships. You can take out loans. Chloe doesn't have your drive. She needs this leg up. You'll be fine, you always are." Those words, "you'll be fine, you always are," they became the anthem of my undoing. Because what they really meant was, you are strong enough to suffer. She is weak enough to deserve our help. I had been fine when I worked 3 jobs. I had been fine when I bought my own clothes from thrift stores. I had been fine when they forgot my birthday twice in a row. But being fine did not mean I did not hurt. It just meant I had learned to hide my pain. I looked from my mother to my father. My mother's eyes were wet, but there was a firmness there, a decision already made. My father would not meet my gaze, he just kept staring at the rain. "Mom," I said, and my voice cracked. "I have worked for this my entire life. I have a 3.9 GPA. I have volunteer hours at the hospital. I have letters of recommendation. The only thing standing between me and medical school is tuition. You promised me, you promised. Your sister needs this, Amelia. You don't understand. She's fragile. She's lost. If she doesn't get this boutique, she might spiral into something dark. You're strong. You can handle a setback. A setback. $50,000 was not a setback. It was a betrayal. It was my parents looking at 2 daughters and deciding that one was worth investing in and the other was worth sacrificing. I stood up. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. "If you give her that money, I will never forgive you. I mean it, I will never forget this." My mother flinched as if I had slapped her. Don't be dramatic, Amelia. This is family. Family helps family. Family helps family. Yes, they do. But that day, I learned that in my family, helping Chloe meant hurting me, and they were perfectly fine with that. I walked out of the living room, up the stairs to my childhood bedroom, and closed the door. I did not cry right away. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. On that wall was a poster of a human heart, the chambers labeled in neat print. I had put that poster up when I was 15, the year I decided I wanted to be a cardiologist. I had traced the arteries and veins with my finger, dreaming of the day I would hold a real heart in my hands, a heart that had stopped, and bring it back to life. That dream died a little that day. Not completely, but enough to change me. 3 days later, the money was gone, transferred to Chloe's account. She opened her boutique in a cute little storefront with big glass windows and painted it pastel pink. She named it Chloe's Closet. I drove past it once on purpose, like picking at a scab. There she was, inside, laughing with a friend, arranging mannequins in designer dresses. She looked so happy, so carefree. She had no idea what her happiness had cost me. I did not confront her. What was the point? Chloe had not asked for the money directly, at least not that I knew, but she had accepted it. She had known it was my medical school fund. My mother had told me that much. Chloe said she felt bad, but she really needs this. Felt bad. That was the extent of her guilt. A fleeting feeling, like a cloud passing over the sun. That night, I packed a single suitcase. I left my childhood home at 3 a.m. while my parents slept. I did not leave a note. I did not say goodbye. I simply walked out the front door, got into my 10-year-old car, and drove to a studio apartment I had rented across the city. It was small, barely bigger than a closet, with a kitchenette that had only one working burner and a bathroom where the shower dripped constantly. But it was mine. And in that tiny space, I made a promise to myself. I would become a doctor. I would succeed. And one day, they would all see what they had thrown away. The first year was the hardest. I applied to every medical school within 500 miles. I was accepted to 3, but the tuition was staggering. The loans I qualified for covered only half of the first year's cost. I needed more, so I worked. I found a job at a 24-hour diner called the Rusty Spoon. My shift started at 4 a.m. I would make coffee, serve pancakes, and wipe down counters until noon. Then I would rush to my tutoring job, helping high school students with biology and chemistry for 3 hours. After that, I worked as a research assistant at a small lab, cleaning beakers and inputting data until 10 p.m. Then, I would go home and study for the MCAT, which I had to retake to improve my score for scholarship applications. I slept from midnight until 4 a.m., 4 hours a night, every night. I lost weight that year, too much weight. My collarbones stuck out like sharp ridges. My jeans hung loose on my hips. I could not afford groceries most weeks, so I lived on the free bread and peanut butter packets I took from the diner. Sometimes a kind cook would slip me a bowl of soup or a stale donut. I never forgot their faces. They were more family to me than my own blood had ever been. There was one night I will never forget. It was December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. I was walking home from the lab at 10:30 p.m. and it was snowing. The streets were empty. Everyone was inside with their families, drinking hot chocolate and wrapping presents. I had no presents to wrap, no family to see. I had not spoken to my parents since the day I left. They had called a few times in the beginning, but I let the calls go to voicemail. Their messages were always the same. We love you. We hope you're okay. Chloe's boutique is having its grand opening next week. You should come. They never apologized. They never offered to give the money back. They just wanted me to pretend that nothing had happened. That night, as the snow fell on my thin jacket, I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. I looked up at the sky, at the gray clouds that hid the stars, and I felt something inside me crack. I was so tired, so hungry, so alone. I sat down on a bench, put my head in my hands, and I cried. I cried for the dream that had been taken from me. I cried for the parents who had chosen my sister over me. I cried for the little girl who had traced a human heart on her wall, believing that hard work and love were enough. And then, after 20 minutes of crying, I stopped. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I stood up, and I walked home, because giving up was not an option. I had made a promise to myself, and I intended to keep it. I retook the MCAT and scored in the 98th percentile. I applied for every scholarship, every grant, every financial aid program I could find. I wrote essays about overcoming adversity, though I never mentioned my family's betrayal. I kept that story locked inside me, a cold stone in my chest. By the end of that year, I had cobbled together enough funding to start medical school. It was not enough to live on. I would still have to work. But it was enough to pay tuition. I was in. The first day of medical school, I walked onto the campus with my head held high. I was surrounded by students whose parents had paid for their education, who had never worked a double shift at a diner, who had never eaten peanut butter for dinner 3 nights in a row. They looked at me like I belonged there, and I let them, because I did belong there. I had earned it. Every single bloody inch of it. Medical school was a beast. It chewed me up and spit me out more times than I can count. There were exams I failed and had to retake. There were professors who doubted me. There were classmates who cheated and still did better than me, but I never quit. Every time I wanted to walk away, I remembered my mother's voice. "You'll be fine. You always are." And I used those words as fuel. I would show her what fine looked like. I would become so successful that she would choke on that word. During my second year of medical school, something happened that I did not expect. I was doing a rotation in the emergency department, and a patient came in with a heart attack. He was an older man, maybe 65, with gray hair and kind eyes. His wife was with him, holding his hand, crying. The medical team worked on him for 45 minutes. They did CPR. They used a defibrillator. They pushed medications. But his heart would not start again. Finally, the attending physician called it. Time of death, 3:17 p.m. I watched the wife collapse against her husband's chest, sobbing. And in that moment, I felt something I had not felt in years. Empathy. Real, raw, painful empathy. That woman had just lost the love of her life. She would go home to an empty house. She would sleep alone. She would wake up every morning reaching for a hand that was no longer there. And nothing I could do would fix that. But maybe, if I became a doctor, I could fix some things. Maybe I could save someone else's husband, someone else's father, someone else's child. That was the moment I stopped running on anger and started running on purpose. The anger was still there, buried deep, but it was no longer driving me. Purpose was driving me, the desire to heal, to save, to make a difference. That was what my parents had tried to take from me, and that was what I refused to let them have. I specialized in emergency medicine. I loved the chaos of the ER, the way time seemed to slow down during a code, the way a team of strangers could come together to save a single life. I thrived on the pressure. I became known as the doctor who never panicked, the one who could walk into a room full of screaming and bring calm. It was ironic, really. Inside, I was still that girl on the bench, crying in the snow. But I had learned to hide it. I had learned to be fine. By the time I finished my residency, I was a different person. I was stronger, harder, more focused. I had also paid off a third of my student loans, which were now over $100,000. The $50,000 my parents had taken from me had grown into a monster of compound interest and deferred payments. I would be paying for their betrayal for decades. But I did not let that thought defeat me. I simply added it to the pile of reasons I would never forgive them. I was offered a position as an attending physician at St. Luke's Hospital, the same hospital where I had watched that old man die of a heart attack. I accepted without hesitation. The pay was good. The benefits were better. And best of all, it was in the same city where my parents and Chloe lived. I had not seen them in 6 years, but I knew they were out there. And I knew that one day our paths would cross again. That day came sooner than I expected. It was a Tuesday, just like the rainy Tuesday that had started it all. But this time, the sky was clear and blue. I was in the ER, stitching a laceration on a young boy's arm. He had fallen off his bicycle and cut his chin. He was brave, barely crying, and his mother held his hand and told him how proud she was. I smiled at them, finished the stitches, and gave the boy a lollipop. As they left, the nurse handed me my phone. I had missed a call from an unknown number. A moment later, a text came through. "Amelia, please call us. Your mother is sick. Very sick. We need you." It was my father's number. I had not saved it, but I recognized it immediately. The same number that had called me 6 years ago, asking me to come home for Christmas. The same number that had texted me pictures of Chloe's boutique. I had ignored those messages. But this one was different. This one said sick, very sick. I let the phone sit on the counter for a long minute. Then I picked it up and listened to the voicemail. My father's voice sounded old. Broken, not the firm, gray-faced man who had stood by the window and told me I would be fine. This was a man who had been worn down by something terrible. Amelia, it's Dad. Your mother has cancer. Stage 4 pancreatic. The doctors say, they say it's bad. She's asking for you. Please, we know we messed up. We know we hurt you. But please come, we're at St. Luke's. St. Luke's, my hospital. My mother was in my hospital, 3 floors below me, in the oncology ward. I had walked past the elevators that morning. I had walked past the signs for the oncology ward. And all the while, the woman who gave me life was dying in a bed I had never visited. A part of me, the old Amelia, the girl who had traced a human heart on her wall, felt a pang of something soft. Sorrow, maybe, or pity. She was my mother. She had held me when I was sick. She had kissed my scraped knees. She had tucked me into bed and read me stories. Those memories were real. They had happened. And now she was dying. But another part of me, the part that had been forged in the fire of betrayal, felt nothing but a cold, steady calm. That part remembered the look on her face when she told me I would be fine. That part remembered the way she had chosen Chloe without a second thought. That part remembered every hungry night, every exhausted morning, every lonely holiday. And that part whispered, let her die. I did not go to the oncology ward that night. I finished my shift. I went home. I sat in the dark, and I thought about forgiveness. What did it mean? Was it something you gave because the other person deserved it? Or was it something you gave because you needed to let go? I had spent 6 years building a wall around my heart. I had told myself that I did not need them, that I was better off without them. And I was. But was I happier? I did not know anymore. I thought about my mother's cancer. Stage 4 pancreatic. That was a death sentence. She had months, maybe weeks. If I did not go to her, she would die without ever hearing my voice again. She would die knowing that her oldest daughter had chosen silence over reconciliation. Was that justice? Or was that cruelty? I thought about Chloe. Where was she in all of this? My father had said my mother was asking for me. He had not mentioned Chloe. Was she there, holding her mother's hand? Or was she somewhere else, too busy with her own life to care? I did not know. And I realized with a shock that I did not want to know. Chloe had taken my future and thrown it away. She had not paid me back. She had not apologized. She had not even visited her own dying mother. Chloe was not my problem. She never had been. The next morning, I put on my white coat. I checked my schedule, and I saw that I had been assigned to consult on a few oncology cases. I could have traded shifts. I could have asked to be reassigned. I could have avoided the ward entirely. But I did not. Instead, I walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the 4th floor, and stepped out into the oncology ward. The smell hit me first. That sterile, chemical smell of hospitals mixed with something else, something sad. I walked down the long hallway, past rooms with numbers on the doors. Room 408, Room 409, Room 410, Room 411, and then Room 412. The door was partially open. I could see inside. My mother lay in a hospital bed, her skin yellowed from liver failure, her body thin and fragile under a thin blanket. She looked nothing like the woman I remembered. That woman had been plump and healthy, with a warm smile and a voice that could fill a room. This woman was a skeleton draped in loose flesh. Her hair, once a rich brown, was thin and gray. Her eyes were closed, and her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. My father sat in a chair beside her, holding her hand. He looked old, too. His hair had gone completely white, and his face was etched with deep lines. He was crying, silently, tears running down his cheeks and dripping onto the floor. He did not hear me approach. I stood in the doorway for a long moment. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I had faced death in the ER 100 times. I had held the hearts of dying patients in my hands, but nothing had prepared me for this. This was not a stranger. This was my mother, the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who was now paying the ultimate price for her choices. I pushed the door open. It creaked just a little, and my father looked up. His eyes widened. He stood up so fast that his chair scraped the floor. "Amelia," he whispered. "You came." My mother's eyes fluttered open. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman she used to be. Then her face crumpled, and tears slid down her hollow cheeks. "My baby," she said, her voice a rasp. "My baby girl, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I pulled a rolling stool closer and sat down at the foot of her bed. I did not touch her. I did not hold her hand. I simply looked at her, and I let the silence stretch between us like a canyon. "Tell me why," I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. My mother swallowed hard. "The money, the medical school fund, we were wrong. We were so wrong, Amelia. Your father lost his job and we panicked. And Chloe, she was so convincing. She said she would pay it back. She said the boutique would be a success and she would give us the money within 2 years to give to you. But she never did. The boutique failed after 18 months. She lost everything. And we lost you." "The boutique failed," I repeated, tasting the words. "So Chloe took my future, and she threw it away on a pink storefront that didn't even last 2 years. My father stepped forward, his hands trembling. "We tried to make it right. We tried to save up again, but with the medical bills and your mother's cancer. We couldn't. We have nothing. We're losing the house. And your mother is dying, Amelia. She's dying, and she can't die without your forgiveness." Forgiveness. Such a small word for such a heavy thing. I looked at my mother's face, gaunt and yellow, and I remembered the way she had looked at me 6 years ago. Soft voice, firm decision. "You'll be fine, you always are. Where is Chloe?" I asked. My mother's tears fell faster. "She doesn't come. She said it's too hard for her to see me like this. She sends flowers sometimes, but she doesn't visit." Of course she didn't. Chloe had never been good with hard things. Hard things were for me. I was the one who handled everything. I was the one who was fine. I stood up from the stool. My parents looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes. They wanted me to say the words. They wanted me to wrap my arms around them and tell them that all was forgiven, that family was family, that love conquered all. But love had not conquered a rainy Tuesday in March. Love had not paid for my medical school. Love had not held me when I cried alone in my apartment. Love had not shown up to my graduation. "Mom," I said, and my voice was soft, almost gentle. "I became a doctor. I worked 3 jobs. I took out loans. I slept 4 hours a night. I did it all without you, without a single dollar from you. And you know what? I am fine, just like you said I would be." My mother let out a sob. "Please, Amelia. Please forgive me." I looked at her for a long, long moment. Then I looked at my father, who was crying now too, his shoulders shaking. 6 years of silence. 6 years of building myself back from the ruins of their betrayal. And now they wanted me to be the bigger person. They wanted me to give them peace. I leaned down close to my mother's ear. My voice was still soft, but there was something else in it now. Something cold, something final. "I will not forgive you," I said. "Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. You chose her. You gave away my dream because you thought I was strong enough to survive without it. And I did survive. I thrived. But I did it in spite of you, not because of you. And that is something you will have to carry with you, wherever you go after this." My mother gasped, her hand reaching for me, but I stepped back. My father opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "I will make sure Mom gets the best palliative care this hospital can offer. I will make sure she is comfortable and free from pain. That is my duty as a doctor. But I am not here as your daughter. That daughter died on a rainy Tuesday 6 years ago when you gave her future away to someone who never deserved it." I walked to the door, then paused. I turned back one last time. My parents looked broken, shattered in a way that had nothing to do with cancer and everything to do with the truth I had just spoken. "You asked for my forgiveness," I said, "but you never asked what it cost me. You never asked about the nights I went hungry. You never asked about the student loans I will be paying off until I am 40. You never asked because you did not want to know. You wanted to believe that I was fine because that made it easier for you. Well, now you know, I was not fine, I survived. But I was never fine." I walked out of room 412, down the long white hallway, past the nurses who nodded at me with respect. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. When the doors opened, I stepped inside, and for the first time in 6 years, I let myself cry. Not because I was sad, not because I was angry, but because I was free. The revenge was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was not a scene from a movie where the wronged daughter throws a drink in someone's face or ruins a business. The revenge was simply this. I became everything they said I could not be, and I gave them nothing in return. No comfort, no absolution, no pretty lies to ease their guilt. Over the next 3 weeks, I visited my mother every day, but I did not visit as her daughter. I visited as her doctor. I checked her vitals. I adjusted her pain medication. I spoke to her nurses about her care. I was professional, efficient, and utterly detached. She tried to talk to me about the past. She tried to apologize again and again, but I would not engage. I would simply nod, write something on her chart, and move on to the next patient. My father tried to talk to me too. He waited for me in the hallway one afternoon, his hands shoved in his pockets, his eyes red from crying. "Amelia," he said, "please, just tell us you love us. Just tell us you forgive us. We cannot bear this." I looked at him. I remembered the gray-faced man who had told me I would be fine. I remembered the way he had turned away from me, staring out the window at the rain. I remembered the silence that had followed me for 6 years. "I love you," I said, "but I do not forgive you." Those two things can both be true. I love you because you are my parents, and a part of me will always want your approval. But I do not forgive you because you stole something from me that you could never give back. And I will not pretend otherwise just to make you feel better. He broke down then. He fell to his knees in the hospital hallway, sobbing like a child. Nurses rushed over, asking if he was okay. I helped him to his feet, walked him to a chair, and sat him down. Then I went back to work. I had patients to save. I could not save him. I could not save any of them. That was not my job anymore. My mother died 3 weeks after our first conversation. I was not at her bedside when she took her last breath. I was in the ER, saving the life of a young man who had been in a car accident. He was 23 years old, with a newborn baby at home. His heart had stopped twice on the operating table. I held it in my hands, literally, during surgery, and I brought him back from the edge of death. When he opened his eyes and looked at me, I saw his whole future flash before me. A future that would not have existed if I had not been there. That was my gift. That was my purpose. And I had earned it all by myself. My father called me after the funeral. He was drunk, which was new. He had never been a drinker before. "She asked for you at the end," he slurred. "She kept saying your name, Amelia, Amelia, over and over, and you were not there." "I know," I said. "I was saving someone else's child. Someone who still had a future." He hung up on me. We have not spoken since. Chloe reached out a few months later. She sent me a long email, full of apologies and excuses. She said she had been young and selfish. She said she had not understood what she was doing. She said she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her and be sisters again. I replied with 2 words, "No refunds." I never heard from her again. But the story does not end there. Because the thrilling part, the part that kept me awake at night for another year, was still to come. 6 months after my mother's death, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer. My mother had left a will. I had not known she had a will. I had assumed that with the house being lost and the medical bills piling up, there was nothing left. But there was something. A small life insurance policy, taken out years ago, before my father lost his job. The policy was worth $50,000. $50,000, the exact amount they had taken from me. The letter said that my mother had designated me as the sole beneficiary, not Chloe, not my father, me. She had left me $50,000 with a note attached. The note was short, written in her shaky handwriting. "Amelia, this does not make up for what we did, but it is all I have left. Please use it to pay off your loans. And please know that I am sorry. I was wrong. You were always worth fighting for. I just did not see it until it was too late. Love, Mom." I read that note 100 times. I held it in my hands and I cried. I cried for the mother who had finally, in the end, chosen me. I cried for the years we had lost. I cried for the little girl who had traced a human heart on her wall, believing that love was enough. But I did not forgive her. I could not. Forgiveness is not a light switch you can flip on and off. It is a slow, painful process, and some wounds are too deep to ever fully heal. The $50,000 did not erase the hunger. It did not erase the exhaustion. It did not erase the loneliness. It was just money, and money cannot buy back time. I used the $50,000 to pay off a chunk of my student loans. I still had $40,000 left, but I was getting there. Slowly, surely, on my own terms. A year after that, I was promoted to Chief of Emergency Medicine at St. Luke's Hospital. I was the youngest person ever to hold that position. The ceremony was small, just the hospital staff and a few friends. But as I stood on that stage, holding my certificate, I felt a presence in the room. Not a ghost, not a memory, just a feeling. A feeling that somewhere, somehow, my mother was watching. And she was proud. I do not know if that is true. I am a doctor. I believe in science, not spirits. But I choose to believe it anyway, because believing it makes the world a little less lonely. Chloe tried to contact me again, 2 years after the letter. She showed up at the hospital, unannounced, with tears in her eyes and a bouquet of flowers in her hands. She looked older, tired, her blonde hair now dull and her face lined with regret. She said she had lost everything. The boutique was gone. Her marriage had failed. She was living in a small apartment and working as a cashier at a grocery store. She said she needed me. She said she had nowhere else to go. I looked at her. The golden child, the one who had been given everything. And I felt nothing, not anger, not pity, just a vast, empty nothing. I took the flowers from her hands. I thanked her for them. Then I called security and had her escorted out of the building. I watched through the glass doors as she stood on the sidewalk, crying, begging me to come back. I did not go back. I turned around, walked to the ER, and saved a life. That was what I did now. That was who I was. Some people might call me cold. Some people might say I should have forgiven her, should have taken her in, should have been the bigger person. But those people have never had their future stolen by the ones they loved. Those people have never gone to bed hungry because their parents chose someone else. Those people do not get to tell me how to feel. So here I am, 6 years after that rainy Tuesday, 3 years after my mother's death, and 2 years after Chloe's last visit, telling you my story. I am Dr. Amelia Hart, Chief of Emergency Medicine at St. Luke's Hospital. I save lives every day. I have paid off 3/4 of my student loans. I own a small house with a garden where I grow tomatoes and roses. I have friends who love me and a cat who sleeps on my feet every night. I am not married, and I do not have children. Maybe someday, or maybe not. The point is, I get to choose. The revenge was not about making them suffer. It was about making myself whole. And I did. I took the broken pieces they left behind, and I built something beautiful, something strong, something that does not need their love or their money or their forgiveness. I walk through the halls of this hospital every day, and sometimes I pass room 412. I do not flinch. I do not feel a thing. That room is just a room now. The woman who lay in it was just a woman. She was my mother, yes. But she was also the person who looked at me and decided I was not worth fighting for. And I decided she was wrong. That is the story. There is no tidy ending where we all hug and cry and make up. There is no deathbed confession that erases the pain. There is no last-minute inheritance that makes everything right. There is only me, standing in the light I created for myself, while they fade into the darkness of their own choices. But here is the thrilling part. The part that makes my heart race even now. I am not done. I will never be done. Because every day I walk into that ER and I save someone's mother, someone's father, someone's child. Every day I give a family more time together, more chances to say I love you, more opportunities to choose each other. I cannot change what happened to me, but I can make sure that other families do not suffer the same fate. I can be the doctor who holds a dying man's hand and tells his wife that he did not suffer. I can be the doctor who brings a young father back from the edge of death so he can watch his daughter grow up. I can be the doctor who looks at a scared child and says, "You are going to be fine." Because I know what it is like to be told you will be fine when you are not. And I know that the words "you are going to be fine" mean nothing unless someone is there to help you through it. So I am there. I am always there. For my patients, for their families, for anyone who needs a hand to hold in the dark. That is my revenge. That is my justice. That is my life. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this. Family is not about blood. Family is about who shows up, who keeps their promises, who sees your pain and does not turn away. My parents and my sister did not show up, so I became my own family. And that, I have learned, is more than enough. My name is Amelia Hart. I am a doctor. I am a survivor. And I do not forgive, I remember. And remembering is its own kind of justice.